As I'm a bit of a tech guy, a lot of people looking to get into PC gaming have asked me for my advice on how to get started. So instead of repeating myself to everyone who asks me, I'm going to put all the basics in these videos to help anyone who wants to get into PC gaming. For the sake of keeping it simple, I'm splitting this into two parts. One about PCs themselves, where I will go over all the components of a PC and how to choose the right ones, and one on how to make a nice setup where I'll go into details about peripherals. But first I'm going to start with going through some common misconceptions. There will be a timestamp in the description to where I actually start the video. Let's start off with the most common misconception about PC gaming, and that is the price. I can assure you that you can build a PC for the same price as a console and get better frame rates on similar settings. Or if your budget is less than the £200 that a console will cost you, you can easily build a PC for less that will still be able to game smoothly. However, you might have to turn down some settings on more demanding titles. But you'll still get all the freedom that the PC platform offers you, and you can upgrade in the long run. Also, consoles lock you into their DRM and take a cut from each game sold, making games more expensive. Most consoles also make you pay for online multiplayer in certain games, and although these services claim to give you games for free, most of these games would be free on PC anyway, and you don't get to choose them, so there is a good chance that you will not play them all. In the long run, these price differences can add up to make PC gaming cheaper than console gaming. Other factors like emulation and backwards compatibility also make PCs cheaper, as they save you from having to buy older consoles to play games that are made for them. Also, when a new generation of console comes out, in order to play new games you have to buy the new console, and the old consoles lose almost all of their value, whereas on PC you don't need to replace your whole PC. If you want better performance, you can just replace a part that is causing the bottleneck and not have to spend any money on all the other components. But this is not a console versus PC video, so let's move on. Oh, and also, another misconception is that PCs are complicated and hard to understand, and although obtaining a gaming PC is more complicated than simply buying one of about 5 consoles that are available, I have never heard of a PC gamer complaining about PCs being too complicated. This is also a factor that makes PCs superior, as you have a far larger variety of options to make a PC that suits your needs. For instance, if you're not too keen on playing all of the latest titles, or you're into less demanding games like CSGO and MOBAs, you can save a bit of money and build a cheaper PC that will play all of your indie games just fine. Or, if you want to do cryptocurrency mining and gaming on the same rig, you could aim to get parts that will use minimal power, but are still very powerful. Or if you are interested in old titles and will mainly do work on a PC, you can build something for less than £50. Before I begin, I need to do a quick disclaimer to remind you that these are just the basics, and you should still do your own research on the parts that you want to buy and if you want more detail. If you are watching this, it means that you have something called an internet connection and that you are able to do research on the internet. So if you have any questions, Google them. The first major component that I'm going to go over is the case. The case is what you're going to use to house all of your components and help keep them cool. When buying a case, the main factors to take into consideration are size, so you can fit all of your components, airflow for optimal cooling, and looks. Obviously, the case is going to be the part of your system that people are going to be looking at, and unless you are going to hide your system under your desk, it is important to pick a case that fits your setup's theme. The PSU, or power supply, is the component that powers your PC, so obviously the most important thing to consider when choosing one is whether or not it will be able to power your PC. Your PSU will be able to handle a certain amount of power, so you need to make sure that your PSU has enough power to power all of your components. So to work out if a PSU is powerful enough, you need to multiply its power by its efficiency. So if you have a 500 watt PSU, which is 80% efficient, effectively your PSU will be able to handle up to 400 watts of power. Next, you will need to figure out how much power you will need. Websites like PC Part Picker will do the math for you to figure out how much power you will need, but if you want to work it out yourself, you just need to add up how much power all of your components use. Most components will tell you how much power they use, and if they don't, they probably don't use much, so there is no need to add them into the equation. On top of this total, most people would recommend adding about 30% just to be safe and still have power for future upgrades. So if your PSU's effective power is greater than your power needs, you should be fine with that PSU. Apart from that, whether your PSU is modular can influence your choices. if your PSU is modular, it tends to be more expensive, but its cables can be detached for better cable management. To store files, your computer needs a storage unit. These can determine how fast your computer loads up files and programs, how many files or programs you can have, and how fast your PC turns on. The main factors to take into consideration are capacity, which determines how much data your unit can store. A terabyte is considered standard nowadays, however 500 gigabytes or even less should be plenty if you are fine with maybe having to upgrade in the future. And the type of drive. There are two types of storage units which work in different ways. The first one is a hard disk drive, or a HDD for short, which works a bit like a CD player, just that they tend to have multiple disks in them that are not designed to be swapped out. Their speed is determined by how fast the disks spin. Hard disk drives tend to be inexpensive, however slow, and in some cases noisy. On the other hand, you have SSDs, or solid-state drives, which store data by using electronic switches called transistors. SSDs tend to be extremely fast, however a lot more expensive than HDDs, and each switch can only have its position changed so many times. It is also worth mentioning that a lot of motherboards are allowed to connect to multiple drives, so it may be worth getting a small SSD to install programs and an operating system on, and a HDD to store files on, so you can take advantage of things like a fast boot up time, but not have to spend a lot of money on a large SSD. There are also different form factors for both SSDs and hard drives. Most SSDs are on the 2.5-inch form factor, which most cases can hold with an adapter most of them come with. The other most common form factor is M.2, which is more compact, however you need to make sure that your motherboard is compatible with one. As for HDDs, they usually come in 3.5-inch form factor, which pretty much all cases are compatible with. So a graphics card, video card, or a GPU is the component that will have the greatest effect on your gaming performance, and therefore the component that you should spend most of your money on. It is best to choose a graphics card based on benchmarks, which are essentially tests for a component that will help you tell how powerful they are. These also exist for CPUs, however a good GPU is more important. Just like a CPU, a graphics card can be overclocked. Many companies make different housings for graphics chipsets. Most of them are fine, and you should be fine going with any brand. For instance, these two GTX 1050 graphics cards have the same chipsets and will perform similarly despite looking extremely different. GPUs can also be used to mine cryptocurrency, however I don't want to go into details about that here. Next we are on to RAM. And no, I'm not talking about the sheep, I'm talking about memory. RAM is essentially really fast memory that is wiped whenever the PC loses power. Your PC uses RAM to store tasks that it is doing or has to do, such as what programs you have open. 8 GB is plenty, however some people argue that you need 16. More than 16 is probably a waste of money for most people. There are also different types of RAM, however all you really need to know is that there's DDR3 and DDR4, and that DDR4 is newer and faster, but more expensive, and DDR3 does the job just fine. Next up we have the Central Processing Unit, or CPU for short. The CPU is the component that does most of the calculations your PC needs to run. CPUs usually have multiple cores, which are a bit like individual processors. More cores tend to be better, however more expensive. It is important to note that not all of your programs and games will be able to utilize all of your cores. For instance, certain games will only use 4 cores, meaning that the rest of your cores are not used and go to waste. 4 cores are seen as standard, however for gaming 8 is fine too. More than 8 cores are usually not necessary unless you are doing heavy multitasking such as streaming. Often the clock speed of individual cores will have a greater impact. The clock speed tells you how fast each core runs out of the box. However, most CPUs have the ability to boost that speed manually, otherwise known as overclocking. Not all CPUs are unlocked or overclockable, which is something worth taking into consideration when buying a CPU. An easy way of calculating the power of a processor is to multiply its core count by its clock speed. CPUs also have something called cache, however I am not going to get into what it is and how it works here. You can also use benchmarks to find out how you can expect your CPU to run. A more powerful CPU is not usually what will affect your performance in game, especially in lower end systems, so I'd recommend trying to spend less on a CPU and more on a graphics card. CPU coolers are also needed to cool them, however most CPUs are fine with the one they come with, and it's only really worth getting a different cooler if you're overclocking or your CPU doesn't come with one. Before I move on to the final component, it is important not to make the mistake of assuming that either i7 processor will be faster than an i5 or an i3. However, this is not true. i7 is a very good marketing strategy often used in laptops. However, the name i7 does not indicate at one specific processor, but at a range of them. For instance, the i7-2600, which I have in my current PC, is far less powerful than an i7-8600, which is seen as one of the best gaming CPUs. The same thing goes for other brands like AMD. The motherboard is a component that connects all of your components, so the main thing to take into account when buying a motherboard is compatibility. Your CPU, storage drives and RAM need to fit the motherboard, which can be a bit annoying. However, luckily websites such as PC Part Picker exist to help choose components and make sure they are compatible. On top of compatibility, what it has on its I/O and whether it supports any future upgrades you might want to make is important. Now that you know what goes into a computer, it's time for a few quick tips. My first tip is to use websites like PC Part Picker to choose your parts, to make sure that everything is compatible and that you don't forget about anything. My next tip is to buy what you can second-hand. As hardware does not usually degrade over time, it is usually worth the risk. And with DDR4 and new graphics card prices currently being quite high, you are best off going second-hand. Finally, my advice for what to do if you have a small budget for your PC. If you want to build something as cheaply as possible, like a console killer PC or even a fast build, I'd recommend buying or salvaging an old workstation PC with the best CPU you can get, second-hand, from a local school, a scrapyard or even a friend. Then upgrading the RAM to at least 8GB and upgrading the graphics card to something along the lines of a 1050. This should be enough to get you a system capable of gaming with a bit of space for upgrading in the long run. Another upside is that a lot of older PCs use DDR3 RAM, making them cheaper to upgrade. If you are lucky, you might find someone throwing out their old PC without realizing their computer is actually quite powerful due to viruses slowing it down, or they might be in a hurry. Organizations such as schools will also replace their computers every now and then, and you can ask if you can have one. In fact, I got my current PC from a local uni and upgraded it to what I have now. Luckily, it came with 16GB of DDR3, which is more than enough for me, and an i7-2600, which is quite old, but still decent quad-core CPU. If you managed to make it this far, thank you. This video took me literally forever to make. I spent at least 6 hours in my editing software, and another 3 or 4 at least recording my lines, and then scripting. I don't actually have any kind of exact number on, but I'm going to assume it's going to be at least 4 or 5, so this is a massive project, so yeah, thanks for watching. I haven't scripted this bit at the end, so I apologise if it sounds absolutely horrible. I will be working on part 2 shortly, however, don't expect it to come out anytime soon because these videos do take a long time to make. Alright, see ya.